Really glad to be here, especially being able to talk about my favorite subject, which is brand bravery, having written a book about it, the 10 steps to, the 10 commandments, 10 steps to brand bravery. So, when you come think about bravery within the context of marketing, I do get it that you say, how can a word that is normally associated with nurses and soldiers and firefighters and people battling terrible illnesses be used in the context of a humble marketing campaign? My argument is that in the right context, hell yes, it can, because you can lose your job based on the decisions that you make. And sometimes it's easier, as we'll see, to stay safe. Now, creative bravery, I think, is something to be championed, to be cherished, because the alternative, let's face it, is being ignored and wasting your time, your money, and your effort, because the people you're trying to reach don't care about the content you're creating. So, Contagious is an editorial intelligence and advisory service. We write and advise about marketing and innovation. We don't make it, just to get that clear. Prior to launching it, I worked agency side at Leo Burnett in Chicago, and then prior to that, I was editor of a magazine called Shots, a creative magazine called Shots. So it's safe to say, I love brands. Fascinated by the power of creative ideas to transform businesses, disrupt categories, change behaviors, sometimes even to change the world. Now, the strongest brands, I think, are precious, powerful things. If you look at this product on screen here, I think it is safe to say that I could probably walk into any conference room, photography museum, factory floor, shopping center, classroom. Every single person would recognize the product, would love it, would have some sort of mental association, either through the taste or the ads or something. That shocked you, didn't it? What witchcraft and sacrilege has just happened here? As far as brands go, this is pretty iconic. What you see here is a slight surprise. Now, would you, as a marketer, mess around with your iconic product like this? You weren't expecting it? Neither were people out in the street in Brazil, because it's exactly what Coca-Cola did a few years ago, deliberately. Now, they did it to confront homophobia head-on, because in Brazil, there was this awful phrase that was circulating, which was "Essa Coco é Fanta," which translates as, that Coke is a Fanta. That man is not a real man because he's gay. Like, horrific. So to take a stand and to sort of assert its credentials as a company that really celebrates equality and diversity, the brand printed Coke cans, as you can see here, with the message saying, "This Coke is a Fanta, so what?" And then they filled them with Fanta. Cheers to Coke. Now, that was one brave product hack. And then they released it first at the Pride event in Sao Paulo. So initially, the cans, really smart move here in terms of advocacy, the cans were given to Coke employees who were told to go out, be part of the event, spread the word by handing out the cans. And then it went so well, it generated so much attention, they greenlit it for a nationwide rollout because it got a really positive reception. With zero media spend, it earned over 1 billion impressions. It made a really powerful statement, more importantly, about the brand's stance about positive, their position on discrimination. Okay, so here is a packet of gummy bears. Now, if I was to tell you that I could take this to Tallinn Airport tonight and use it as my ticket to get me home to London Luton, you'd think I was crazy. I think the Wizz Air agents on the gate will think I'm even crazier. But it happened. This was a really mischievous way to kind of lift itself, to rise above the bloodbath of SEO and search engine optimization and people looking online to book a flight. The budget airline Transavia created its own range in a collaboration with one of France's biggest supermarkets. They made a range of snacks, including gummy bears, chips, and so on, that would double up as flight tickets. And this was a really, really fantastically unique space that they created away from their competitors. So what happened? You would spend something like 40 euros on one of these, and it would basically allow you to go to somewhere like Lisbon or to Dublin or wherever, because there was a code hidden inside the packet. So by spending the money, you then got a code. And then behavioral economists, I think, they call this stunt price anchoring, because it ties the purchase of your airline ticket to like a low-cost, everyday item. It suddenly makes a flight seems a bit more approachable, a bit more spontaneous. Fantastic. That's not part of my... It makes it feel like a really spontaneous decision. And you can see the results here from this initiative. Dramatic increase in search and bookings, 1.5 million euros in free media. Really smart idea. Okay. Here's a little book, okay? Although you've probably got your suspicions now, right? Okay. And they would be founded because this book is not a book, it is a month's supply of tampons. Designed as a book. This is a really deviously brilliant piece of thinking, because in Germany, a few years ago, tampons were taxed as, drumroll please, luxury goods, obviously. Now, to confront this issue, the company called The Female Company, it was a startup that made feminine hygiene products, they figured out that women pay more tax on tampons than they would if they were buying fine art, truffles, caviar, and so on. So to confront that injustice, they printed 10,000 copies of the book, because books are taxed at half the rate of tampons. And they printed 10,000 copies, they targeted influencers, journalists, female politicians, and so on. And at the heart of the campaign, importantly, was a petition urging the German government to lower the tax rate on tampons. And the killer stat that the agency unlocked that got everybody's attention was that, on average, a German woman would spend nearly 2,000 euros in tax on feminine hygiene products in her lifetime, which is a crazy, crazy injustice. So the petition, very quickly, as you'd imagine, hit 100,000 signatures, which meant that the German parliament had to debate it as a subject. The good news was the law was changed. The lower tax is now being applied to period products, which I think is a fitting final chapter to the tampon book. Okay, so finally, bridge. Hard to be anything else, yeah? No? Technically, this bridge is actually an advertising campaign. Here's a story. It's Buenos Aires, 1999. This very rich, scary, powerful property developer has built this brand new district on the banks of the river in a neglected industrial zone. It's called Puerto Madero. And when he wanted to officially launch it, he went to Argentina's most famous creative director, somebody called Jorge Heyman, and he said, I'm going to give you $4 million for a marketing campaign to get people into my gleaming new development of shops, houses, offices, and so on. Now, like any good creative, Heyman spent time interrogating the product. He went around different times of day and night trying to get a feel for this ambitious, gleaming new place. And then, when he went back to meet the scary client and present his marketing campaign, he said, you don't need a marketing campaign. I need you, instead of the $4 million of the marketing campaign, I want you to spend $6 million on a bridge. But not just any bridge, it's going to be designed by the famous architect Santiago Calatrava. Because his rationale was that the district felt too disconnected from the main hub of the city. He was saying, in order for me to get there, I live in the place that you're trying to attract people from. I need to take 2 buses, a taxi, which is expensive, or I walk and I'm tired and I go through areas I don't want to be walking through. So instead of posters, instead of commercials, instead of advertising, you need a bridge, he said. This should be an artwork, it should be an artery. This will bring your area alive. It will last a lot longer than a 12-week media plan. You fast forward to now, this bridge is, this area that the bridge obviously sparked into life is now regarded as one of the most successful urban regeneration projects ever. And there's a nice little touch you can see from what it was called Bridge of the Women. This was all about celebrating women because every other street around this neighborhood was named after a man. So again, a nice little touch. Now for me, the thing that all those things that I've showed you have got in common is the word heresy. Because they're all maverick, they're all deviant, they're all really kind of challenging solutions that confront the orthodoxy of conventional thinking. And importantly, people, real people, win as a result of those ideas. The team at Coke and their agency, David, in Sao Paulo, had the guts and the conviction to kill their own sacred cow, the red Coke can, by asking, who says you can't mess with a global icon? Especially when something as important as equity and inclusion is at stake. Transavia and their agency, Le Gaulois in Paris, teamed up with one of the biggest supermarkets in France to hack the brutally over-competitive cheap flights category by creating their own space where their competitors couldn't reach them, that blue ocean space. And also with the added bonus, once you're on the plane, free snacks. Fantastic. So the female tampon company, their partners at Schultz and Friends, felt aggrieved that the laws are supposed to enshrine fairness. So they set about exposing them and then eradicating an injustice that had been created many years ago by, guess what, male politicians. So the result of the tampon campaign, women won, bureaucrats nil. Now, a brave Argentinian creative director, he risked losing. Imagine that he's got to go and present this idea to his client. He's got an independent agency that he owns and the stuff to keep running. And he says, I don't need your $4 million, I might lose it, but you have to do this instead, and it's going to cost you more. Can you imagine the bravery of that moment? It was 180 degrees away from where his client was expecting him to land. And he knew that there was a consumer friction point that would never be solved by ads. Brave idea. So the practice of asking heretical questions is something that we devoted a whole chapter to in our Contagious Commandments book. It's probably my favorite one. And I think it's because heretical questions force you, they help you to stay agile. They help brands kind of avoid complacency, get you into that blue ocean space that I've talked about, away from the frenzied, like the blood-red waters of where all your competitors are fighting each other and killing each other. They're all trapped in that space because they've got internal cultures that don't allow them to dare ask scary, provocative, unorthodox, challenging questions because they don't want to rock the boat, don't want to lose their jobs. Now, make no mistake, it's easy for me to stand up on stage and say all this. Heretical questions are tough. Now, despite what it claims, I think this industry is not designed to take creative risks. There's a management expert, Lynn Vincent, who we quoted in the book. She says, this is why advertising so easily retreats to the known, because she said, creativity is inherently risky. A creative idea, by definition, is novel and useful. If the idea is truly novel, it's going to have some risk attached. But because of this risk, people often feel more comfortable maintaining the status quo. The status quo becomes a marketer's security blanket. Because it underlines, I think, why advertising as an industry is dominated by cliche and conformity, why so much content stays within the customary guardrails. Washes whiter, tastes better, bite and smile. You can insert your own cliche or category convention in here. But there are so many studies out there in the world that show that unoriginal advertising is less likely to be noticed, remembered, or to be persuasive. So I would say against that backdrop, is the status quo, shit like this, really worth fighting for and inflicting upon those poor, innocent people that you call consumers? No, but heretical questions are worth fighting for. So if you take water, few categories have got codes as anchored as mineral water. It's hard to imagine these cliches ever being challenged. Well, one brand that has blown the cliches to smithereens is Liquid Death. Now, I'm not going to steal Andy's thunder. You'll see a video from him right at the very end. But I just want to say that Liquid Death is a brand propelled by this heretical question. Does healthy stuff really have to be sanctimoniously virtuous? Cutting against the orthodox path allows Liquid Death to do things differently. One of their principles is enjoy the haters. Like its promise is to murder your thirst. When was the last time you saw the word murder in a marketing manual? Never. Now, its gothic design world is inspired by 80s metal music gore, like heavy skateboard-style illustrations, 90s cartoons. It's weird, it's irreverent, there's no pine trees or white T-shirts and babies. Anywhere near this, it is bordering on the crazy. But it is underpinned by a really positive message, which is to drink more frequently, be more healthy, and death to plastic, use our aluminium cans. Now, it's generally accepted in the world of advertising that differentiation is a good thing. The history of the industry is peppered with claims about differentiation. Back in the 1800s, Budweiser claimed to be the king of beers. And you think, fast forward to 1990s, Apple and their Think Different campaign. BBH, London agency, very famous, iconic Levi's campaign, when the world zigs, zag. Now, these are all examples, I think, because basically being different means standing out, okay? Standing out means being noticed, and being noticed is crucial, I think, for brands seeking to gain the attention of customers and an advantage over the competition. So the science behind this is pretty clear. It's what lies at the heart of what's known as the von Restorff effect. This is the theory of differentiation impacting memorability. That's where people are more likely to remember something that just sits apart from the crowd. It's attributed to Hedwig von Restorff's experiment in 1933, when she presented participants with several similar items and one distinct item, and she found that people were much more likely later on to remember the misfit. No better illustration of the von Restorff effect than this logo for the heavy metal band Party Cannon, a very defiantly unique logo. Your eye is instantly drawn to that band and no one else. And I think this is the same reason why a non-conformist brand like Liquid Death stands out in the water category. It's all about anarchy, not zen. So the Liquid Death of the food category is a startup called Holy Veggie. It's a plant-based snack food company. It launched its first brand-building campaign last year. But unlike their tedious, lecturing, earnest competitors, this brand has turned the category conventions upside down by asking, why not just accept that people hate vegetables? And things kind of escalated from there. Their brand's agency is Partyland in California, and their managing partner, Andy Silver, told Contagious that they already knew that only 1 in 10 adults are eating enough fruits and vegetables in North America. But digging deeper, they found that these are people who really fucking hate vegetables with a passion. And those people who hate vegetables with a passion have started blogs, they've developed cookbooks, created clothing lines dedicated to the hatred of vegetables. So you can see how the agency got from there to this.
We want wings! Yeah, wings!
Your kids hate veggies, they'd rather starve than eat them. Holy veggie. Your kids think they're smart, they're not as smart as you. Holy veggie. They don't have a clue, undeveloped brains. Holy veggie. Yes, it's a lie, but lying is okay. Parents do that. Tell them what you did, you got them to eat vegetables. Trauma. You betray their trust, but eating plants is worth it. Every send you holy veggie.
You just ate vegetables.
A fantastic tagline, how that stands out in the category. So that was one of 3 ads. They all riff on the idea that sometimes it takes a little coercion to get people to eat vegetables. Campaign included outdoor, social, and some very fun stunts to support the haha, you just ate vegetables tagline. And what I loved it, the brand trolled vegetable haters on social media. They offered them a $50 Holy Veggie voucher to get back in the vegetable game. And then they created this special box of tissues to give to kids who were then presented with the product once they'd realized they'd been shafted because of their undeveloped brains. So the campaign doesn't just challenge the status quo, it gives the brand an ownable identity, it puts clear blue water between Holy Veggie and everyone else, and I think it flies in the face of everything else in the category, which of course drives salience, and let's not overlook this one, it's actually bloody funny. You know, we could all do with a little bit more of that in our life, and especially in our commercial breaks. So sticking with the food category, this is a brand that has made a virtue out of the inescapable fact it has a very strong yeasty taste, so many people find that taste repulsive. They hate it. The brand's tagline, you either love it or you hate it, has become part of the British cultural lexicon. You say, she's a Marmite politician, he's a Marmite singer, and so on. You love or you hate. And the campaign underlines, this campaign I'm going to show you, underlines that sort of creative confidence that the brand has engineered. This was called the Marmite Gene Project, and it included a website that was targeted at the mass market, had this taste face tool. It used facial recognition technology to determine when you were eating that you had to apply for a sample, eat it, film yourself, and it could tell where you stood on a 100 scale as a lover or a hater, and then everyone was then sent a shareable reaction GIF afterwards. So it was a really clever way to get people involved and maybe tempt some of the hesitant customers your way. But to appeal to the really hardcore Marmite community, the brand commissioned a clinical scientific trial that tested 260 adults. They found 15 genetic markers linked to people's preference for the product, indicating that everybody is born with a tendency to be either a lover or a hater of yeast. So Marmite then made these test kits available for £90. That's like €100 for anyone that was passionate enough to buy it. Now, you could claim that these kits were not scientifically viable, but who cares when the whole campaign was supported by this?
Yes!
They're here!
This should be interesting.
Please find enclosed the results of your family's recent Marmite gene tests.
These show whether you were born a lover or a hater.
What does it say?
You're a hater?
Dad,
Yeah.
I need to tell you something. I'm a Marmite lover.
I thought you said I hated it, and this says I love it. What type of mother does something like that?
But baby,
Oh my goodness, I am so stupid.
I prefer jam.
I'm carrying a hater's baby!
You basically took away my childhood!
Oh, sweetheart.
Come here, son.
You didn't care.
Oh, we just want you to be happy with who you are.
Have you ever done it here? In this house?
Yes.
I only did it to make you happy.
Do I look happy? On this table?
Yes.
Baby, please
I
don't.
don't hate Marmite, I hate you!
I can learn, look.
Get in, all lovers. I knew it.
Hate it! I hate it!
He's never even tried it.
On this table. Brilliant. The editing on that is fantastic. But again, a brave proposition. So despite the cost of the kits, according to the agency, which is Adam and Eve, DDB, this was Marmite's most effective campaign to date. I think spontaneous awareness was up 400%, sales increased by 14%, it got 1.4 billion in earned reach. Success. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You think it's easy for a startup or a challenger brand like Holy Veggie, Marmite, Liquid Death to ask heretical questions. But it's no excuse, okay? Big brands ask heretical questions all the time. Domino's asked a very brave but essential question a number of years ago that sparked one of the biggest corporate turnarounds of all time. Its share price growth, after they said, "Why does our pizza suck?" and they did the pizza turnaround campaign, their share price outperformed Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google. It grew 2,000% in 7 years. Wish I'd invested. This year, Fiat decided that the world does not need any more grey cars. So it stopped making them, despite the fact that grey cars are the most popular colour cars on the planet. That decision might look completely illogical, completely irrational. But I would say it's brave, and the chief exec of Fiat wanted to do it because it's created this instant counterculture. It's like this really smart, counterintuitive, PR-friendly point of differentiation. He said, this is challenging, and it is disruptive, and it is aimed to reinforce Fiat's leadership as the brand of joy, colours, and optimism. When you've got the chief exec of a company saying that, the market follows. A brand zagging while everyone else is zigging. Now, I believe a lot of marketers would have killed the ideas that I've shown you, and they were probably convinced that they were doing the right thing. And they probably felt that their company would have quietly congratulated them for doing so. And that's why Contagious thinks that most companies are run as anti-creative organizations without even knowing it. Cornell University published some research into why this happens. I think basically because creativity is something new or novel, the study reported that people can experience failure or perceptions of risk or social rejection when expressing a risky idea to others, and uncertainty about when their idea will reach completion. So risk and uncertainty tend to be quite unwelcome in corporate environments. I think CFOs get very uncomfortable around uncertainty. They want budgets and forecasts to be hit. Businesses reward and motivate people based on dependability. But creativity is not certain, it is not dependable. It feels new and it feels very risky. Most businesses are run to minimize risk, and because of this, the immune system of the company, the way that we reward people, the way that we work, starts to kill off creativity, sticks to those cliches, sticks to the safety. This is not my personal conjecture. There's someone called Teresa Amabile. She's a Harvard professor. She studies creativity and motivation. And she lays a lot of the blame for anti-creative cultures on management. She wrote in the Harvard Business Review, managers don't kill creativity on purpose, yet in the pursuit of productivity, efficiency, and control, they undermine creativity. But the anti-creative bias, I think, is even more pernicious than that, because this Cornell study likened the anti-creative bias that a lot of business people have to racism, in that it's observable for people to say one thing very explicitly, but behave in a completely contrary way. So while many marketers may say that they want and they value creativity, the Cornell study showed that when they're presented with things they feel uncomfortable with, the same parts of the brain that fires up are those associated with poison, vomit, and agony. So there's this tension between knowing that creativity is linked to effectiveness, saying that you want it, and believing that you do. But deep down, because you subconsciously associate creativity with pain, vomit, and everything else, you reject it. You don't want that in your life. And here's the kicker, your company probably rewards you for rejecting it. It becomes this positive feedback loop that ends up with individuals, organizations becoming less and less creative over time. And I would say it creates a threat to business. You know, companies must be able to adapt and evolve to changing circumstances, opportunities, and threats. But without creativity and the ability to ask difficult questions, they're very poorly equipped to do so. The Cornell study also says that our findings imply deep irony. Uncertainty also makes us less able to recognize creativity, perhaps when we need it most. In other words, creativity is threatened by a lack of understanding into how it works, combined with a general aversion to the risk that's built into doing anything new and deviant, which is why so much of advertising sticks to the status quo. You've got the British advertising effectiveness researchers, Les Binet and Peter Field, have got a real problem with that. And they know, because science, that standard advertising is inefficient. They've done extensive work with the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising and established that fame campaigns, ones people talk about, recognize, want to share, watch again, outperform on all metrics. They outperform on sales, market share, price sensitivity, loyalty, penetration, and profit. Heretical questions, by their very nature, are often a hack for fame because they create unexpected ideas that stand out, are much more likely to get talked about, and therefore, for the CFO, they're more efficient. Funny that. Okay, so how do agencies and organizations equip themselves to overcome these obstacles? How can you embrace the heretical way of thinking? How do you build a culture where it's okay to break convention? And it's okay to foster counterintuitive creativity that is more likely to get you noticed. So in the Contagious Commandments book, we advise you to think of heretical questions like a nesting doll. The most obvious ones are the biggest. I think most people are quite comfortable going one level deeper, but then they often stop short. They get to awkward questions and stop in case they create embarrassment or they offend any of their colleagues. Which means that very rarely does anyone touch heretical questions. They're the ones that are so radical that they actually question the foundations that your company or your brand is built on. And yes, they don't always lead to fun conversations, but they are the interrogations, the provocations that could transform your thinking, protect your business, and invigorate your marketing. Now, another heretical questions exercise is to ask yourself this question: what is the best way to burglar-proof my house? The answer is to lose your keys. Throw them away. And those of you who have ever been in that unfortunate position of losing the keys to your apartment or your house will recognize the insight here. So once you need to break in, you just interrogate the weaknesses in such a different light. And it's the same with your brand and your business or your brief. So as a workshop exercise, just try losing the metaphorical keys to your brand, your business, or your brief, and ask yourselves, how do we get back inside? What would we do if we were a startup? Think like a burglar, think deviant. There's a guy called Hal Gregerson who is a leadership and innovation researcher at MIT, and he's got this very interesting approach to counter complacency and predictable thinking. He calls it question storming. This is where you ask a group of people to generate 50 questions, or catalytic questions in his words, concerning the challenge that they're facing. He says that brainstorming is for wimps because you tend to find just linear solutions that are sitting very close to the surface. Now, he acknowledges that 50 is a shit ton of questions. People get stuck, usually around the 20 or 30 mark. But he's saying when you push through that pain barrier, it's between the 40 to the 50 that you get to the greatest, the most provocative, stimulating questions. And that effort could be the great unlock that you've all been waiting for. And chances are, none of your competitors will have thought of those ideas because they're too scared, they don't have the culture, they hate creativity fundamentally. They don't get there, they don't have the guts or the tenacity to get to that safe blue ocean territory that you've just found. So question storming is designed to liberate a team's thinking, to squash predictable ideas. And the key thing to remember is that for it to work, you've got to focus purely on questions. Don't answer anything at all, not allowed, because answers come with objective disqualifiers. They interfere with the flow. So a great way to get people used to the process, you unshackle them, you take them out of their day jobs, is to just adjust their mindset and give them questions like, I've done this in client workshops. You just start by saying, okay, if you were a billionaire, if you were running the UN climate sustainability goals, what are the 50 questions you would ask? And people are much more free. They get into the idea, and then, once they're used to it, you then give them the brief and the normal one, and they've got it, because it's very easy just to provide answers and shut things down. We could never do that, couldn't afford that. That all goes away with this. Now, as any battle-scarred creative will tell you, standout ideas often start with a standoff. If you're someone who does their best to avoid conflict, it can be very, very hard to acknowledge this. But I think that disagreement should be regarded as tension in search of resolution. No truth should ever be seen as inconvenient. People should be able to agree to disagree, knowing that eventually they will find a solution that solves the friction if you use enough heretical questions. So just to finish off, I'm going to run over by 2 minutes late, I'm sorry. How to avoid advertising's herd mentality. How do you generate greater attention? I think the answer lies in asking more provocative and unexpected questions and forging an internal culture that safeguards risk, promotes honesty, and champions constructive dissent. There's Peter Drucker, who's the influential business philosopher. He said the first rule of decision-making is this: one does not make a decision unless there is disagreement. In his 1973 book, Management, he tells a story of how Alfred P. Sloan, who was the chief exec of General Motors, he once abruptly stopped a meeting because everyone agreed. There was consensus straight away. And he said, I propose we postpone further discussion of this matter until our next meeting to give ourselves time to develop disagreement. He recognized that decisions that come from a crucible of spirited dissent will be stronger than those that are made without the sniff of a challenge. Now, the first thing that happens in the face of heretical questions is that people roll out the objective disqualifiers, the obvious reasons why you should safely reject the idea. So in the case of Holy Veggie, those might be, the product should be the hero and we're being rude. It's too provocative, we're being terrible about children. But I love vegetables. But having the appetite to push through all the reasons to say no, getting around those objective disqualifiers by asking, how might we? What if we did? What would happen if? Like improv. Those can lead to campaigns like I showed you that have got real power. Okay, so there's some practical tips for you to experiment with in your pursuit of heretical questions. If you need any further proof of the value of them, consider this. This is way back in 1970. Marshall McLuhan championed the differentiating power of questions in a world swamped by content and data. He said, in a global information environment, the old pattern of education in answer finding is one of no avail. One is surrounded by answers, millions of them, moving and mutating at electric speed. Survival and control will depend on the ability to probe and to question in the proper way and place. There's a word missing here, so I fixed it. There you go. I would argue that safeguarding the status quo, the conventions, the cliches, is not the proper way and place. And because this is why heretical questions are vital for marketers. Fundamentally, you're dealing with people, or consumers, as you like to call them, and people are unpredictable, they're awkward, they're independent, they're feisty, they choose their own path. These kids, bless them, are a metaphor for your target audience, okay? Not one of them is using the slide. Now, as a brand, you design this perfectly cool, exciting, sacred product experience or campaign, and then you expect people to behave in a really predictable, very rational, orderly way. But look at our KPIs. You need to understand them. You need to understand our message, and then they need to feel grateful for the brilliance that you just bestowed on them with a really shitty ad. Whereas the brutal truth is they're going to do whatever the hell they like. And they will not give a monkey's gonad about confounding your expectations or listening to what you want to say unless it appeals to them. So see this as a sign. I urge you to be deviant, be awkward, make mischief. See where it gets you. Ask heretical questions. Thank you.